Hello everyone, I'm Dragons After Dark, and today we'll be going over my Falcosaur Team Rumble strategies for Ominitron and Stormheim. The coordinates and Zufu's links will be in the description. The rematch strings, tdScripts, and steps can be found at the links. Some of the tips for these battles are: make sure the Falcosaur you are battling with is summoned before you begin your fight. And the Falcosaur does not need to be in slot 1, enter the battle, or survive to complete the requirement. Ominitron is a 3-enemy fight with Mini Magmatron, an elemental, Mini Arcanotron, a magic, and Mini Electron, a mechanical. So, let's get started. Our first team up for the Falcosaur Team Rumble is our Bloodgazer Team Rumble. And for this team I have the Pteracnid Ambusher, the Fell Piglet, and of course the Bloodgazer Hatchling. So my strategy for this team is to use the Pteracnid Ambusher to take out the Arcanotron as fast as we can because it does magical damage, and since our Bloodgazer will have to come in for this team, we don't want it taking any magic damage. And then we're going to use the Fell Piglet to whittle away at the elemental and mechanical pets as much as we can before we bring in the Bloodgazer to finish them off. So let's get started. Okay, so for our first Falcosaur Team Rumble battle, we have the Bloodgazer, and the idea here is we're going to use the Pteracnid Ambusher to get the Arcanotron down as much as possible. That way we don't have this guy going against our last slot pet if we can help it. So we're going to start with Toxic Fumes. And now we're going to Sticky Web, which is going to keep the Arcanotron in place and not allow it to swap. And we're going to use one of the new-ish abilities that comes from some of the pets in Zereth Mortis called Devour the Weak. I really like this ability. I especially like it when paired with Toxic Fumes because it means I don't have to apply a poison on every pet in case there's a swap out before I can apply Sticky Web. But now that we're done with Devour the Weak, I am going to web, and this should be it for this pet. Now we'll bring in our Fell Piglet, and the only ability we have that's going to finish it off quickly is going to be Headbutt, so we're going to use that. And then we are just going to Fell Immolate until everything is dotted and the Fell Piglet dies. I did at some point try to incorporate Pig Out, but it didn't make a difference. There was really only one point in time where it would have made a big difference, and that would have been on the first round with the Magmatron. But as you can see here, even with that crit, as long as the Incineration Security Measures doesn't also crit, we should be fine. And the Fell Piglet will only last until round 9 anyway. Okay. Alright, 1 second. Just want to make sure I get this right. Okay. And then we are going to Falcosaur Swarm to get that dot on the Magmatron. And sometimes it'll die on the back line, sometimes it won't. And then we will do this. And Predatory Strike to finish off the battle. And that's it for the Bloodgazer Team Rumble. Next up, we have our Direbeak for the Direbeak Team Rumble, and for this team, I have the Cold Light Surf Runner, a Grumpling, and of course the Direbeak Hatchling. So my strategy behind this team is to use the Cold Light Surf Runner with their aquatic abilities to take out the Magmatron, which does the AoE damage to the team, and using Clobber to force the Magmatron back in to bring it down as quickly as possible, and rooting it with Whirlpool And then I'm going to use the Frost Shock and Deep Freeze with the Grumpling to bring down the other two pets. I haven't needed the Direbeak as of yet to clean up, but it is there just in case. You can just use Predatory Strike, and I believe I have, let's see what it is, Savage Talon slotted. So those two should be more than enough to clean up anything the Grumpling doesn't if it sees any crits. So let's get started. Okay, this one is going to be our Direbeak Team Rumble, and I like this one. It's fun. You get to use stuns to kind of swap everything in and out and get as much damage in as possible. So we're going to open up with Whirlpool. And we don't want the Ominitron in, so we are going to clobber them. And then hit Fish Slap, which will hit the Magnetron when it comes in, Whirlpool, and then one more Fish Slap, and the Magnetron is finished. Okay, so now we are going to Fish Slap once. Whirlpool here. Fish Slap. And Fish Slap. And now the Whirlpool is going to root the Ominitron, which is kind of what we want, because now we can Frost Shock. And Deep Freeze. And even if something weird happens and this guy gets rooted instead, we should be able to take out both of the pets anyway with this stun sequence. So we're gonna Snowball. And obviously they're still gonna be swapping in and out. Frost Shock him. And then Snowball. Kills him. And then Deep Freeze. And everything's finished. And our Direbeak didn't even need to come in, which is always nice, especially if we have the Ominitron left over. But that's it for the Direbeak, so on to the Sharptalon. Our next team up is the Sharptalon for the Sharptalon Team Rumble, and this one is exactly like my general strategy, except we have a Sharptalon specifically in slot number 3. So Anomalous make pretty quick work of this team, especially double Anomalous. So the idea behind this team is doing continual damage to all 3 pets as they swap in and out, because that swap can make it difficult to set up investment effects that could take them down. So we're just using the good old 1-2 punch of Void Nova and Poison Protocol and corrosioning in between, and that's about it. So let's get started. For the Sharptalon team, we have the same one that I used for my general team, since it's double Anomalous and we need 2 magic pets for the Sharptalon Team Rumble anyway. And since the double Anomalous worked so well, why not just reuse it? So we'll open with Void Nova. Poison Protocol. And in case you didn't see the general strategy video, the concept here is to do as much continual damage to the overall team as possible while they're swapping in and out, since it can be hard to set things up because of that. So after this corrosion, this anomalous dies, and we're going to bring in our next one. And then just like the general strategy, because the corrosions are on here and we want to make the most of them, we are going to poison protocol first. That way our dots also get use of the extra damage increase, and then we will Void Nova. And now we should get 2 corrosions before we die. And then that's it. Sometimes you'll need to bring the Sharptalon in to clean up, but sometimes you get lucky and everything ends on around 8. And now let's move on to our last battle with the Snowfeather. And our final team is for the Snowfeather and the Snowfeather Team Rumble. It has the same exact concept as Anomalous. The only issue obviously is that it's clearly not taking it down any faster when you've got 17 rounds instead of 9. However, it does work a treat. I do have the Blight Breath restricted to the HP and HS breeds, and that's because barring any crits, this gets you at least 1 extra round with each of the Blight Breath, as opposed to, I believe it's the Balance breed, which has less health and can cut off a couple of rounds early, which leaves more for the Snowfeather hatchling to do. And we want the Snowfeather to come in as last as possible because some of these attacks can hit pretty hard. So we're just going to use another 1-2 AoE punch of Acid Rain and Dreadful Breath. So let's get started. So with the Snowfeather, we're going to see the same concept as the Anomalous, and that means we're doing AoE damage for as long as possible as all of the pets swap in and out. I really like to use Blight Breath for team damage strats, simply because it's got the perfect combination of Acid Rain and Dreadful Breath. Clearly it won't work for all teams because if you've got a team of beasts, Dreadful Breath is not going to be the way to go. And while Dreadful Breath isn't doing any particularly strong or extra damage against any of these guys, Acid Rain is, because one of them is an elemental. So you just want to Acid Rain on cooldown and Dreadful Breath in between. And then of course the extra nice thing about them being undead is they do get their immortal round even though they're not doing as much damage. Now this is the one that, as you can see, because the elemental has been knocked down further than the other two because it is taking strong damage from Acid Rain, it's no longer being swapped in, which means you only get 1 AoE team hit on the first round from them, which is nice, which means when our Snowfeather hatchling has to come in, it's got as much life, or almost as much life as it possibly could, given the circumstances of the strategy. And this one is the longest one out of all of them. However, it's not necessarily a bad thing because you do get some of the automation of Dreadful Breath running on its own. So you're not having to click for every Dreadful Breath, which is nice. And we took out the elemental with it only having been in once for the entire time, and that's great. Now, you can Sleeping Gas here, but it hasn't built up a whole lot of... You haven't used it to build up its damage, so we're just going to go ahead and Dreadful Breath to get this guy as low as possible and get the magic as low as possible. because we don't want our Snowfeather hatchling to come in and have to do too terribly much against the pet with stuff that can kill it, with magic attacks. So we will crouch, and then thankfully we're just under 24%, and even if with this attack reduction, Predatory Strike does double damage when the pet's under 25%, so we take it out without ever taking a magic hit, which is another good reason. And then this might take 2 hits or 3 hits just because we've got the attack reduction. But with crouch we should be okay, and of course we'll stay faster, not only because we have 325 speed without our flying buff, but because all of these enemies are incredibly slow. And that's it. You've won all of your Falcosaur Team Rumble fights. Congratulations. If there's another fight you'd like to see a video of, or if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Until next time, I wish you all the best of luck, thank you for stopping by, and happy battling!